Knowledge management is a discipline, and it sits outside of information management and library science. It sits outside of data management or corporate training. But it needs to be supported by a set of services that make sure that it has what it needs to be successful. So librarians and records managers, all those teams of people, metadata technicians, they're the service providers that can align their services to support the strategic objectives of KM programs. And if you don't have a KM program in place, or if you have one, but you don't know what their objectives are, that's an opportunity for you to begin to dig in and find out, where is KM in your organization? What are its strategic objectives? And how can you make sure that the library and information science programs and services that you have align to those? The KM program staff, become allies and advocates for investments in the tools and resources that can support knowledge sharing across the enterprise. If you're struggling to get the budget to support the library, then finding a way to align with what KM needs to do and saying, we would love to provide these services, but we need these resources. And it's probably a better solution to have you managing metadata services than having them have to learn to do it themselves. And that's taking support out of the library and information program and moving it into a structure that makes KM unwieldy at times as well. Knowledge services may be traditional services in a new context, or they may be new services that librarians and their allied professionals are well positioned to offer. You really need to determine where are your skill sets, where do your people thrive, and are there things that you can do inside the KM space that you are currently doing in other ways? Like you're cataloging books in your library catalog, but are you contributing to metadata about the lessons learned in their lessons learned database? I mean, just giving them a controlled vocabulary and helping them apply that would be a way to help them be more successful in managing knowledge in the repositories and databases that are supporting the knowledge management activity. So what are some examples of knowledge services? I've already hit on a couple of them, but I'll talk about some more here. Taxonomy development. As I mentioned before, do KM tools need controlled vocabularies that support, and support to connect terminology across the organization? There are a lot of times that the words people are using are just talking across each other. And this is where librarians can join in the knowledge management program to help make those keywords and those terms relatable to everybody, regardless of where they come to. There are times even when people can change their terminology from one organization to the other, but have it all mapped in the background so the same documents are appearing. How about community of practice moderators? Do you have communities of practice in your knowledge management community, but they're not led by managers or moderators that can spur discussion, capture frequently asked questions, and identify issues that need resolution? Giving people a space to work together is great, but giving them a librarian or an information professional that can listen and ask informed questions, maybe even bring in external resources to say, hey, you guys were talking about this the other day, here's a resource that supports that. Those are the kinds of things that a moderator within a community of practice can really add value and make a KM program more successful. Selected dissemination of information. Now, I use really old language there to say that we may be doing things and have done things in the past that need to be re-envisioned for the KM support. Do your communities of practice need someone supporting them through new research to find and surface relevant resources for the group? If you're asking people to share what they're reading, you can also bring in other things that they may not see that you can license or even identify that are already licensed for them to share and read, and maybe even bring out the salient points of an article to say, here are the few things I got out of this article that may be of use for this community. We have done selected dissemination of information for years and years, but sometimes we find ourselves doing it for only the same old folks and not bringing on new users of that information. So your KM program may be a great partner for programs and services you're already providing.